Hey guys, enjoy these new 20 stories. We hope you enjoy them. Let us know your thoughts. And as always, most of you listening aren't subscribed, so please smash that subscribe button and hit that like button too. It's free and does so much for us. We're forever grateful. Now to the stories.
It started off kind of subtle, like the kind of thing you don't notice until you're way too deep. Back then, me and Juju were still in that phase where everything felt like a movie. We'd stay up late talking about our childhoods, music we hated, who we'd ghost if we ever got famous. Dumb stuff. I thought you really listened to me. That's the messed up part. I thought you was just present, like tuned in. He always remembered stuff I said in passing, even weeks later. He'd quote me word for word, and I'd be like, damn, I barely even remember saying that. I used to think it was romantic or whatever. Turns out, I was just being recorded. He had this habit of bringing up arguments like they were court cases, not just the big ones either. Even little stuff like me forgetting to grab milk would get dissected like I was on trial. One time, I told that he overreacted about something dumb I said when I was tired. I don't even remember what it was now, something about him being clingy or jealous, I think. And he goes, that's not what you said. I've got the recording. I laughed at first like I thought he was kidding. Then he pulled out his phone, opened this random folder, and played it. There it was, my voice, clear as day, saying things I didn't even remember saying. Not in a text, not in a video. Just my voice from some random night on his couch when I didn't know he was listening that hard. I got quiet. I didn't know what to say. I asked him when he recorded it, and he said, I do it sometimes. Just might know you'll twist things later. That sentence sat in my chest like a rock. Like I was some unreliable narrator of my own life, and he was just trying to set the record straight. But I didn't fight back. I just nodded and moved on because, honestly, I didn't want another argument turning into a podcast. After that, he started doing it more. I catch him sliding his phone face down on the table when we talked. Once, I noticed his Apple Watch light up during a fight and realized he hit record through that too. He was slick about it, like he'd been doing it for way longer than I knew. And he didn't just save the files, he labeled them. Stuff like kitchen fight, Feb 13, or jealousy accusation, Sunday night. It was like he was building a whole library of my worst moments. And the thing is, he never played the whole conversations, only clips. Just the parts where I got emotional or loud, or said something messy out of frustration. He'd pull it up during fights like evidence and go, see, you're always like this. You never remember what you say. I'd sit there confused, trying to defend myself, and he'd say I was gaslighting him. That word got thrown around so much, it started to lose meaning. He made me feel like I was the manipulative one just for reacting to him recording me in secret. I tried to outsmart him once. I started watching what I said, choosing out words like I was being interviewed. I became this weird, watered-down version of myself, polite, calm, passive. It felt like I was trying to be a better person, but really I was just scared of being turned into a villain in the next audio clip. My personality shrank down to fit inside the version of me he wanted to store. I remember one time we had this big fight about my job. He thought my coworker was flirting with me, even though the guy was literally engaged. I told Juju it was in his head. Next thing I knew, he pulled out a recording from the week before where I said the guy complimented my outfit. That was enough for him to prove I was being dishonest. I couldn't even argue anymore. Every time I tried to explain myself, he played a new file. It was like arguing with a courtroom slideshow. I started checking all his tech. I'm talking paranoid level stuff. His car, his bags, even under the couch cushions. I find SD cards, random USBs, and I never knew what was on them. He said it was for music, but I never once saw him make a playlist. And when I asked him to stop, he'd say I was being secretive. He always flipped it. Always made it about how I must be hiding something if I didn't want to be recorded. He told me normal people don't care about stuff like that. Then if I was really honest, I wouldn't mind him keeping track. The worst part, he made me think it was fair. Like I actually started to wonder if I really did twist things. If I was too sensitive or too dramatic or just bad at handling conflict. He'd say things like, I'm just showing you what actually happened. And I'd nod like, yeah, okay, maybe I do need to see it from his side. But it wasn't his side. It was a version where I never had context, or he cut out the parts where he provoked me, made me doubt myself, wore me down. One day, I found a folder on his laptop with over 50 audio files, some labeled by date, others just with my name. It wasn't even hidden, just sitting there next to his downloads. I listened to a few and realized he'd been doing it since the beginning. Even in the early days when we were still in that butterfly phase, he was archiving me. I don't know why, maybe to build up dirt in case I ever left him. Maybe to win. I shut the laptop and didn't say a word. Not that night. Not the next one. I just started distancing myself in little ways, trying to get back to who I was before everything got so clinical. When I finally ended it, he said I was being irrational and cold. I didn't even react. I just grabbed my stuff and walked out. I never asked him to delete the recordings. I don't know if I cared anymore. He could keep every single file. They weren't really me anyway. Just a chopped up version of someone trying not to drown in a relationship that felt like being under constant surveillance. It sounds fake when I say it out loud now, like something out of a TV show where the toxic boyfriend hacks into your work life just to mess with you. But no, this was real life, my real life, and Abdi. He didn't even flinch when it all came crashing down, like he wasn't the one who lit the fire. I'd met him through a group of mutuals. We all used to hang out at this house near campus where someone was always cooking rice at midnight, and someone else was always half asleep on the couch. At first, he just seemed chill. One of those guys who knows every line to every movie, sits back a lot, always low-key. I liked that. I was in a loud stage of life, busy job, busy friends, loud family, so his quiet energy felt like a break. He was supportive at the start. I worked as a front desk lead at this marketing firm downtown, nothing fancy, but it kept me moving. He'd wait outside to walk me home, bring me snacks when I forgot to eat, ask how my day was. You know, normal boyfriend stuff. But somewhere along the way, his questions got weird. Not caring weird, more like snooping. He wanted to know who I sat next to, who made me laugh, if I ever worked late with just guys. I used to laugh it off like, bro, relax. I know you like half the people at my job. But he didn't laugh. He'd just look at me for a little too long and then change the subject. That's when it started. Small things at first. My manager pulled me aside one morning and said she got a strange email about me. Said someone claimed I was flirting with married coworkers and creating an uncomfortable atmosphere. I literally thought it was spam. I joked about it even, but she looked serious. She said she was required to document it. I told her it wasn't true and she said she believed me, but we had to be careful. I told Abby about it that night and he barely reacted. Just kind of smirked and said, "Damn, that's wild." Didn't ask how I felt. Didn't even ask what they said. I didn't clock it then, but now I think he liked watching it unfold. He got off on it or something. Over the next month, more emails came in. Anonymous ones. Always vague, but just damaging enough to raise eyebrows. One said I was constantly distracted by my phone and unprofessional in meetings. Another one accused me of taking long breaks to flirt with male clients. I'd never even met half the people they named. HR had to get involved. They made me sit through 2 different meetings with them and my manager, and even though no one said it directly, I could feel it. They were watching me now. I cried after one of those meetings in the bathroom. I texted Abby and he didn't even answer right away. When he did, it was just a thumbs up. I should have known then, but I was stuck in this loop of thinking maybe I was messing up without realizing it. Like maybe I was too friendly. Maybe I needed to watch my tone. I started triple checking everything I did. I'd barely speak during team calls. I stopped wearing anything even a little fitted. I even changed my work lock screen in case someone glanced over and saw Abby's face. Not because I was proud, but because I didn't want him tied to the mess. The final complaint said I had a pattern of emotional outbursts and had previous issues at other jobs, which was a straight up lie. I'd never even been written up before. I knew that one had to come from someone close to me. They used language I recognized, stuff I told Abby during late night convos, stuff like how I got overwhelmed at my last job, how I was scared to mess up because my family was counting on me. He'd use that stuff. He used me to write that email. I still didn't want to believe it. Not until the day I got called into the big conference room. My manager and HR sat across from me and told me I was being let go due to an ongoing pattern of concerning feedback. No details, just vibes. I nodded, numb, packed my desk in silence, and walked home with a box full of pens and old gum. I got home before Abdi. Sat on the couch staring at the wall. When he walked in, I told him I lost my job. He blinked once and then sat down like nothing happened. Said, "That's crazy." Didn't hug me. Didn't ask what happened. Didn't even pretend to be shocked. I kept looking at him, waiting for some sign. Guilt, fear, even relief. But his face stayed blank. That's when I knew. Not because he confessed or anything. Just the way he didn't care. Like he already knew it was coming. I checked his laptop when he was out later that night. He was logged into some burner email. The sent folder had emails with my boss's name and the subject line. Different variations. Different lies. All worded in ways that mimicked real concern, like he was some coworker trying to help the company. He even used phrases I recognized from things we argued about, like the time he said I crave attention, or how I used emotions as a weapon. That stuff was in there, word for word. I didn't confront him. I just left. Packed one bag and dipped while he was at the gym the next day. I stayed with a cousin an hour away and started looking for work again. I never even blocked his number, just let him text whatever nonsense he wanted and never answered. I think part of me didn't want to give him the satisfaction of a fight. He didn't deserve to hear me cry again. And here's the kicker. A month later, I got a LinkedIn message from someone new at my old job. They said they heard about what happened and just wanted me to know they didn't believe the rumors. That a few people in the office thought something weird was going on, but didn't know how to bring it up. Too little, too late, but it helped a little, just a little. Anyway, that's what Avi did. He tore my job out from under me just to keep me close. He couldn't handle me being around other people, so he made sure I had nowhere else to go. With Mike, it wasn't all bad at first. He had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room. Like when he looked at you, the world just kind of faded out. He remembered little things I said, like the brand of cereal I liked or the way I took my coffee, and he'd show up with it like it was nothing. It felt thoughtful, like he paid attention. It made me feel special. But then I started forgetting stuff, or at least I thought I was. It was small stuff in the beginning. Like I'd leave my keys on the counter before going to bed, but in the morning they'd be in my jacket pocket. I figured I must have done it on autopilot. Then I started misplacing things more often. My work badge, my favorite hoodie, a gift card I swore I left in the drawer. I'd tear my apartment apart looking for them. Mike would just sit back and watch me panic, then eventually say something like, "Check your bag again," and boom, there it was. Always in a spot I swear I already looked in. The way he'd say it, though, not helpful, more like amused. Like it was cute how scrambled my brain was. I started joking about having early memory loss. He didn't correct me. He leaned into it. Started calling me forgetful all the time, like it was this adorable personality trait. I'd laugh along, but deep down it messed with me. I started writing stuff down. Shopping lists, reminders, even conversations. I was that worried about forgetting something important. Then there was this day I'll never forget. I came home from work and noticed my bookshelf looked different. Nothing major, just two books swapped spots. I figured I was being paranoid, but then it kept happening. I'd organize the kitchen drawers, and the next day stuff would be out of place. I thought maybe I was just tired or overthinking. I told Mike about it, and he made this weird face like he was trying not to laugh. He told me I should see someone about it. That maybe my stress was making me lose time. That line stuck with me, losing time. I started questioning everything. I'd replay whole days in my head, trying to track where I'd put something. One time, I left a water bottle on my nightstand and woke up to it being gone. I looked for it everywhere. Hours later, Mike found it behind the couch. He acted like it was no big deal, but I was freaked out. I couldn't understand how it got there. I didn't remember ever moving it. Again, he just shrugged and said, "You probably forgot." The worst part is that I believed him. I really thought something was wrong with me. I started Googling symptoms, looking into memory disorders, asking friends if I seemed off lately. Nobody noticed anything. But Mike kept bringing it up. Whenever we argued, he'd throw it in my face, say I couldn't even remember what I said 5 minutes ago. He'd say I was impossible to reason with because I couldn't stay in reality. That word, reality, started sounding sharp coming from him. It got to a point where I was scared to speak up. If I said I didn't remember something, he'd twist it. If I insisted I did remember, he'd call me stubborn or accuse me of lying. He once told me I'd spilled wine on his hoodie, even though I hadn't touched wine in weeks. I kept trying to remember if I maybe blacked out or something. He made me doubt myself so deeply, I stopped trusting my own brain. Eventually, I started doing little tests. I'd take a picture of something before I left the house, like the way I folded a blanket or where I left my charger. Then I'd come home and compare it. A few times I caught it. Things were moved, just slightly. A blanket folded a different way. My mail rearranged. The worst one was my toothbrush being in the drawer instead of the cup where I always kept it. I knew I wasn't losing it. But when I showed Mike the pics, he laughed and said I was being obsessive, that I needed help. He said if I didn't trust him, maybe I had trust issues, not memory problems. That line messed me up even more. He was flipping it back on me constantly, like I was the one doing something wrong by noticing the weird stuff. He once told me I said something cruel during an argument, a phrase that was so specific I knew I never said it. When I pushed back, he said I blocked it out, that I always blocked things out when I didn't want to feel guilty. It was psychological warfare, but quiet. No yelling. No throwing things. Just little moments of confusion stacked on top of each other until I didn't know which way was up anymore. I couldn't prove anything because it was all tiny. Small enough that from the outside, it looked like I was just tired or stressed. But inside, I was unraveling. The turning point came by accident. He left his phone on the table one morning when he went to shower. I don't snoop, but I was desperate for something to make sense. I opened his notes app. There was a list. I swear this is real. A whole list. Had all things she moved as things I moved. He'd written down dates, times, and even what he planned to move next. Stuff like move headphones under bed or switch spoon drawer layout. My heart dropped. It wasn't even subtle. He had this whole system. He was doing it on purpose. For months. I didn't wait for him to come out of the shower. I grabbed my stuff and walked out the door. Blocked his number on the train. Never looked back. I didn't tell him why. Didn't send a text or try to explain. I didn't need to. He knew. And I'll be real, it took months to feel normal again. Even now, sometimes when I misplace my keys, I get that little spike of panic. Like maybe I'm still being messed with. Like maybe I really am losing it. But then I remind myself I'm not. It was him. He built a whole world where I couldn't trust my own mind. Just so he could be right. Just so he could feel bigger. Anyway, that's how Mike broke my brain and called it love. I didn't notice what Imran was doing until it was too late, which is wild looking back, because the signs were right there. It just didn't hit me that someone could be that calculated, especially someone who knew how close I was to my family. I used to talk about them all the time. My mom, my sisters, even my cousin who lived 2 hours away but felt like a sibling. He'd listen, nod, act like he was into it, but really he was listening for weak spots. Stuff he could use later. When we first started dating, he came off as super understanding. Like the kind of guy who actually wanted to hear about your feelings. He'd ask about my past relationships and say stuff like, I just want to know what you've been through so I can do better. Seemed sweet. I told him about stuff, about how I had depressive episodes before, about a time I had a rough falling out with my dad, about how I sometimes overthink things and spiral. Stuff I told people I trusted. He acted like he appreciated my honesty. Fast forward a few months, and suddenly I felt like my family was pulling away from me. Not all at once, just gradually. My sister stopped replying to my texts as fast. My mom got more short with me on the phone. My cousin started canceling our usual coffee hangouts. I asked if everything was cool, and everyone just said they were busy or just tired. I didn't think much of it at first. I thought maybe I was imagining it, or maybe it was just one of those off seasons where people drift a bit. But then my mom called me one night, and her tone was weird. Real tight. She asked if everything was okay with me. I said, yeah, why? And she goes, because Imran's been really worried. He says you've been kind of unstable lately. My stomach dropped. I was like, unstable how? She didn't even know what to say. Just kept repeating what he told her. That I've been having mood swings, locking myself in my room, not eating properly, snapping at him for no reason. Which was insane, because none of that was true. If anything, I was the most emotionally steady I'd been in a while. Yeah, I had rough days like anyone else, but I was showing up to work, staying connected, even working out more. But he was planting seeds behind my back, to my own family. I tried to explain to her, but I could tell she wasn't convinced. She kept saying things like, we just want you to be okay. which is what you say when you've already decided someone's not. That conversation ended with me feeling more alone than ever. I hung up and just sat there, staring at the wall, trying to figure out how the hell that narrative even started. I confronted Imran the next day, and he went full performance mode. Told me he was just concerned, and that he didn't mean to make it sound dramatic. Said he only brought it up because he loves me and didn't want me to feel alone. But I knew he wasn't concerned. He was creating distance between me and the people who grounded me, people who might notice something was off. He made it seem like I was too fragile, too unpredictable to be trusted on my own. And when they started backing off, guess who I leaned on more? Him. That's the thing. He played both roles, the villain and the hero. He'd stir the pot behind the scenes, then hold me while I cried when I felt isolated. He'd say things like, "I don't know why they're being so cold. It's messed up how they treat you," like he wasn't the one feeding them poison the whole time. And I believed him for a while. I really did. I thought my family was just being judgmental or tired of my emotions. That maybe I was too much. I started second-guessing everything. I stopped sharing my feelings with anyone but him. I pulled back from group chats, ignored invites to family dinners, started isolating myself without even realizing it. It was like this slow, quiet slide into a version of myself that didn't exist before. Just me and him. No outside voices. No reality checks. Just his voice, louder than anyone else's, telling me who I was. It took one slip up for the whole thing to crack open. My cousin messaged me randomly one day, asking if we could talk. I said sure, and we met up in the park where we used to hang out before everything got weird. She told me that a few months ago, Imran called her out of the blue. Said he was worried about me. Told her I'd been spiraling, missing work, having breakdowns. None of which was true. She didn't believe him right away, but figured something had to be going on if he was reaching out like that. That's why she backed off. She thought I needed space. I sat there on that park bench feeling like I'd just walked into the sun after months in a dark room. It made everything click. He'd been calling them one by one, feeding them this version of me that sounded dramatic enough to be believable but vague enough that they couldn't confirm it. And since he acted like the perfect boyfriend in public, they had no reason to question him. After that, I started reaching out again. Slowly. I explained what had been happening, and at first some of them still looked at me with that same concern, like I was fragile. But I kept showing up. Over time, the truth settled in. They realized what he'd been doing. My sister flat out told me, "I think he was trying to cut you off so you'd only trust him." She was right. That's exactly what he did. I didn't blow up at him. I just started pulling away. Quietly, he noticed, of course. Started asking why I was being cold or if I was mad at him. When I finally ended it, he acted like I betrayed him. Said, after everything I did for you, like he hadn't been feeding lies to the people I loved. I moved out a week later, changed my number, blocked him on everything. It took a while, but I got my people back. The ones who really knew me. They didn't hold it against me. They could see now what he'd done. But it still haunts me sometimes. How easy it was for him to twist the story. How close I came to being completely cut off, thinking he was the only one who cared. That's what Imran did. He made me the villain in my own family story, just so he could be the only one left when everyone else disappeared. Okay, so this one started off funny. Like, when Liam showed up at my gym the first time, I actually laughed. I was mid-set, sweating like crazy, and there he was, standing near the entrance in a hoodie, waving like a kid on the first day of school. I thought it was some dumb surprise, like a "look, babe, I'm taking my health seriously now" kind of thing. I smiled, waved back, and even helped him find the front desk so he could sign up. That was the last time it felt like a joke. I'd been going to that gym for about 8 months before he ever stepped foot in it. It was my one peaceful place. You know, that one spot where nobody expects anything from you. That's what it was. I had a routine. Mornings before work, headphones in, hoodie up, no socializing. Just meet my playlist and the squat rack. I didn't go there to be cute or meet people. I went there to zone out and feel strong. It was one of the few things that kept my anxiety from spinning out. The first week he joined, it was fine. A little annoying because he kept trying to talk to me mid-set like we were chilling at a park, but I figured he'd get the hang of gym etiquette. He didn't. If anything, he got worse. He started following me around the gym like a shadow. I'd moved from the bike to the cables, and there he was. I'd take a break in the stretching area, and he'd suddenly need to stretch too. It got to the point where I couldn't even sneak a breather without him asking what was wrong or why I looked moody. Then came the time checks. I used to stay at the gym for like 90 minutes. It helped me in the morning after work, but once Liam joined, he started questioning why I stayed so long. At first it was just jokes. Damn, you training for a marathon or something. But then it got more serious. He'd glance at his watch and say, "We've been here a while, don't you think?" Or if I went alone, he'd ask how long I'd stayed and who I talked to. Always said it in that casual way, like he wasn't really asking, just curious. But it was always a test. Always something he'd remember and bring up later. I started cutting my workouts short just to avoid the questions. 10 minutes shaved here, another 5 there. I started feeling guilty when I did an extra set. Like I was sneaking around even though I wasn't doing anything wrong. It sounds stupid saying it now, but it crept in real slow. I barely noticed it happening. And then there was the people thing. He'd point out random guys and ask if I knew them from somewhere. I'd be mid-run on the treadmill and he'd tap me to say, "That dude's been looking at you for a while." It got so annoying. I tried telling him it was just gym people spacing out, but he didn't drop it. One time I said hi to a girl I used to work with, and later he asked, "So, who's the guy she was with?" Looked like he knew you too well. I didn't even remember seeing a guy. He planted these little doubts in my head. Made me feel like I was doing something sketchy by just existing in public. I stopped making eye contact with people altogether. Started wearing baggier clothes. Stopped stretching in open areas because I could feel his eyes on me. Every time I talked to a trainer or asked someone to spot me, he'd bring it up later like I'd crossed some invisible line. It all boiled over one night when I went to the gym without him. He'd said he wasn't feeling well, so I told him I'd still go. I thought it was fine. But when I got there, he was already parked in his car across the street watching. I didn't even notice at first. It wasn't until I got home and he started asking specific things. Who was on the treadmill next to me, what time I left, what music I was listening to, that I realized he followed me. When I asked why, he played it off. Said he happened to be in the area and just wanted to check in. That was the moment something clicked in my head. Like this wasn't about working out or health or even spending time together. This was about control. He didn't trust me. Not because I gave him a reason not to, but because he didn't like the idea of me having a space he couldn't control. The gym was mine. It was the one thing I did just for myself, and now it was ruined. I stopped going after that. Not officially, but it just didn't feel right anymore. I'd make excuses like, "I'm tired" or "my knees hurt." He probably thought I was just being lazy, but I didn't care. I couldn't take the tension anymore. The way he'd stand too close, the way his eyes scanned the room the whole time, the way he'd ask questions that weren't really questions. It wasn't worth a headache. After a few weeks, I joined a new gym across town. Didn't tell him. Signed up under my middle name. I go super early in the morning, right before sunrise. Headphones on, hoodie up, just like before. It wasn't the same, but it was something. It felt like stealing a little piece of my life back. When he found out, and of course he found out, he lost it. Said I was hiding things. That I was being secretive. I said, yeah, I was. Because every time I tried to lie my life like a normal person, he acted like I was cheating or lying. He said if I had nothing to hide, I should have just brought him. That line. Always that line. If you got nothing to hide. I didn't even respond. I just left. That was the last time we ever had a conversation that wasn't over text. I kept going to my new gym. I kept doing my thing. Eventually, I stopped checking over my shoulder. Eventually, the workouts felt good again. Freed again. He joined my gym without asking, made it all about him, and turned one of the few peaceful parts of my day into another place I had to shrink myself just to keep the peace. The first fake account slid into my DMs on a Wednesday. I remember because I was having one of those tired midweek days. Nothing special, just work, laundry, trying to not order takeout again. I opened Instagram during a break and saw this message from some guy named J something. The profile looked kind of real, but just off enough that something felt weird. Like no tagged photos, weirdly clean layout, and a bunch of fitness posts that looked pulled from stock images. Anyway, the message was normal at first. Just said I looked familiar and asked if I lived in the city. I didn't respond, just left it on read. I had a boyfriend, obviously, and I wasn't about to get caught in some cringe online flirt fest. I mentioned it to Devonta later that night, mostly just laughing about how spammy it felt. I showed him the message and everything. He acted chill, shrugged and said something like, "That's what happens when you're pretty, huh?" I remember that because it was the last time he said something that even sounded like a compliment. A few days later, another account popped up. Same kind of vibe, 0 tagged pics, 3 posts, all in some overly filtered aesthetic that looked like it was trying too hard. This one was a dude named Trev. He messaged me at 2 a.m. saying he loved my vibe and asked if I wanted to link. Like, straight to the point. Again, I didn't respond, just deleted it and moved on. But I started getting suspicious. Not just the messages, but the way Devon started asking me questions. He'd say stuff like, "You didn't get any more DMs lately," or "Any creeps hit you up this week?" Not in a protective way either, more like he was baiting me. Then he started leaving his phone face up whenever he got a text, making sure I could see it, like he was waiting for me to ask about something. When I didn't, he'd bring it up himself. Some chick from high school slid in, I didn't even open it, like he was setting a moral standard I was supposed to match. One night, I opened my phone and found another message, this one from a guy named Marcastyles _2. The second I saw it, I knew it was fake. Not just fake in a spam account way, fake like someone I knew made it. Because the message said something no stranger would say, "You still work at that studio near Maine." Only Devontae or someone really close to me would know that. That's when it clicked. I started checking the accounts, like really checking them. They were all following the same people, same type of profile pictures, same writing style in the captions. One of them had a username that was weirdly similar to one of Devontae's old gamer tags. I didn't even want to delete it at first. It felt too wild. Like, who does that? Who builds a fake army of dudes just to mess with their own girlfriend? But the more I looked, the more obvious it got. All the accounts were only following women, mostly girls I knew from my job or old friends I hadn't seen in years. No guy friends, no randoms, just a perfectly curated list of people Devont was probably suspicious about, or jealous of, or just keeping tabs on. I started to feel sick. I didn't confront him right away. I wanted to be sure. So I made a fake account of my own and messaged one of his fake accounts. Just said, "Yo, this your girl's, man." Boom. Within an hour, that account was deleted, not blocked. Deleted, vanished. That was my confirmation. When I finally brought it up, he didn't deny it. Didn't even act surprised. Just sat there with that same look he always gave me when he was low-key angry but trying not to explode. Said he was testing my loyalty. That he had to know if I was the kind of girl who'd entertain random guys online. I just sat there, stunned. Not even mad at first, just shocked that someone I trusted actually took the time to catfish me. Multiple times. And then tried to spin it like it was some loyalty exam. He told me I passed. Like I should be grateful. I didn't even answer him. I just stood up and left. I didn't yell. Didn't pack a bag. I just left to breathe. I went to my sister's and sat on her couch in silence for hours while she kept asking, "Are you okay? What happened?" I couldn't even explain it without sounding like I was joking. Later that week, he texted me some long-ass message about how trust goes both ways, and he only did it because of how much he cared. That's when the gaslighting really kicked in. Said I never really gave him enough reassurance, that I was too friendly with guys online, and that he felt backed into a corner. I didn't respond. He messaged one of my friends too, trying to get her to talk to me. Told her he was trying to protect the relationship. She showed me the screenshots. It was all lies, twisted like I've been entertaining those fake guys when I hadn't even replied once. He made it seem like he caught me doing something like he was justified. I blocked him after that. Full cutoff. Deleted every photo, every message thread, every tag. It wasn't even just about the fake accounts. It was the fact that he made me question myself for weeks. He messed with my head for no reason other than control. Made me think I was under constant watch, that I couldn't be trusted even when I was doing nothing wrong. Sometimes I still get nervous opening DMs. Like even now, when some random account sends a message, there's this little flash in my chest that says, what if it's him again? What if he's still trying to catch you slipping on something that never happened? Devont built fake dudes out of thin air just to see if I'd cheat, and when I didn't, he still acted like I failed some imaginary test. When I first met Brad, he acted like he didn't even notice makeup. I'd show up with a full face, foundation, lashes, lipstick, the whole thing. And he'd say stuff like, "You look good, but I like you better fresh." I thought it was just a preference, not a red flag. He was the kind of guy who made you feel like being low maintenance was a compliment. Said he loved that I didn't try too hard, even when I was trying real hard. Back then, I wore makeup because it made me feel put together. Not to impress anyone, not to be extra. Just a way to feel like myself. A little armor for the day. I'd wake up early for work, do my skincare, do my face, play music in the background. It was kind of my ritual. Calm, normal. I never thought it would become something I had to defend. It started when we moved in together. That's when he started seeing all my stuff laid out. Palettes, brushes, lip cleaners, all lined up in the bathroom drawer. At first, he just made jokes. Like, "What's all this war paint?" Or, "You go in your own store with this crap." He'd say it with a laugh, but there was always this edge to it, like he wasn't really joking. Then one morning he held up a contour stick and asked, "What even is this?" I told him, and he rolled his eyes and dropped down the floor. Didn't say anything else, just walked off. It wasn't one big moment. It was a bunch of little ones that built up until I realized I wasn't allowed to be myself anymore. He started asking why I was putting on a mask when I got ready for work. Said I didn't need to impress anyone at the office. I told him I wore makeup for me, and he just shook his head and said, "No one does that kind of stuff just for themselves." Like I was lying, like my own comfort couldn't possibly be real. Then he started watching me while I got ready, not in a cute way, in a weird, hovering way. I'd be halfway through my eyeliner and catch him staring at me in the mirror, arms crossed, waiting to say something. If I was running late, he'd say it was because I spent too long painting my face. If I dressed up a little more than usual, he'd ask, "Who's that for?" And when I said "me," he'd laugh like I told a joke he didn't believe. It escalated slowly but steady. One night I came home from work and noticed my lipsticks were gone. I thought I misplaced them. Spent a good 15 minutes tearing apart drawers, checking the car, UNDing through the trash. I asked Brad if he'd seen them, and he said, "Oh, yeah, I tossed a few. They were old, right?" Just like that, didn't ask, didn't check, just threw them away like they were junk. I was stunned. Told him he had no right to do that. He shrugged and said, "You don't need that crap anyway. I'm doing you a favor." That line stuck in my head for weeks. A favor. Like tossing my things without asking was an act of love. Like he knew better than me. After that, it was one product at a time. One day my setting spray disappeared. Next week it was my eyeliner. Then a whole brush set went missing. Every time he had an excuse. It was broken. It smelled weird. It was taking up too much space. And every time I got upset, he flipped it on me. Said I was being materialistic. That I cared more about makeup than our relationship. That I was addicted to covering up and didn't even realize it. I started hiding stuff. Tucking makeup bags in the back of the closet, keeping my foundation in my gym bag, applying mascara at work instead of home. I felt ridiculous. Like I was sneaking around for something harmless. I mean, it's makeup. Not drugs. Not cheating. Not some secret life. Just blush and concealer. But to him, it was this sign that I wasn't comfortable enough around him. That I was faking something. That I was trying to be someone else. One night, I put on a full face for a friend's birthday. Just a light beat, nothing crazy. He looked at me when I came out of the bathroom and said, "You look like a different person." I said, "Thanks." He just frowned. Didn't say anything else for the rest of the night. I came home to find my eyeshadow palettes dumped in the trash bin under the sink. No warning, no apology, just gone. That was when something snapped in me. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I just felt hollow, like I wasn't even surprised anymore. I cleaned out the trash quietly, didn't even bring it up. I knew the conversation would just go in circles. He'd say I was overreacting, that I was choosing stuff over him, that I needed to learn to love myself bare. But I already did. That was the thing he didn't get. I already loved myself bare. I just also loved winged liner and tinted moisturizer. A few days later, I packed up all my makeup and took it to my best friend's place. Told her to hold on to it for me. She didn't ask questions. Just nodded and made space in her closet. That night, I stayed over. The next morning, I texted Brad that I needed some space. He replied, "Take all the time you need. Maybe you'll finally see I was right." I never moved back in. Months later, I started fresh. New apartment, new job, new routine. I got my makeup back from my friend and laid it all out in my bathroom, just like before. First thing I did was sit down, play music, and do my face. Not for a date, not for a party, just for me, just because I could. That's what Brad did. He threw out my makeup one by one and said it was for my own good, but really it was about control, about slowly erasing parts of me he didn't like until there was nothing left but what he approved of. It wasn't even that much money. That's the part that still annoys me. It wasn't some huge life-changing debt. It was just this dumb store credit card I opened in college for a laptop I couldn't afford all at once. I was still paying it off slowly. Nothing crazy, just one of those bills that hung around month after month like a fruit fly. When Simeon found out about it, he made a bigger deal than it was. At the time, I thought he was just being helpful. Like, yeah, annoying but helpful. We were sitting on the couch one night, half watching a movie while I scrolled through my banking app, and I let out this little groan. He asked what was up, and I told him I'd forgotten the payment date on that card again and got hit with a late fee. He immediately started asking questions. How much was left, what the interest was, if it was affecting my credit. I remember saying, "It's not that serious, I've got it under control," but he didn't let it go. A couple days later, he handed me a folded check, just slid it across the table like it was no big deal. It was for the full balance, a little over $600. I was surprised, but also kind of grateful. I hadn't asked. He just did it. I told him I'd pay him back monthly, and he waved it off like, "Don't worry about it. Just focus on saving." That should have been the end of it, but it wasn't. At first, it was little jokes. Like if I came home with takeout, he'd raise his eyebrow and go, "Must be nice to balance out now that your debt's gone." It sounded playful, but I started noticing how often he said stuff like that. Every time I spent money, he had something to say. If I bought a new top, "Didn't realize you were still building your wardrobe with my investment." If I talked about going to a concert with friends, "Hey, so you got money for everything but paying me back, huh?" He never said it angrily, always with a laugh. That made it worse. I asked him one night, "Do you want me to start paying you back monthly?" And he said, No, I told you not to worry about it." Then immediately followed it with, "But it'd be cool if you cut back on the impulse buys, though." Like somehow my money was his to supervise now, and he kept receipts. Literal receipts. He'd look through bags when I got home and ask how much stuff cost, or comment on my Venmo transactions like he was monitoring them. I started feeling like a teenager with an overbearing dad. It turned into a game I couldn't win. If I spent nothing, he'd say I was being distant and acting weird. If I spent something, he'd say I was careless. One time I bought my friend a birthday gift, and when he saw it on the table, he said, "Wild how generous you are with other people's money." I just stared at him. Didn't even know what to say. Then there was the worst part. He started using the debt thing as proof that I was financially irresponsible in general. If we got into an argument, even about totally unrelated stuff, he'd bring it up. Like, "You don't even budget right," or "Maybe if you manage your money better, I wouldn't have had to step in." Like helping me gave him the right to rewrite my whole personality. He made it sound like I was out here drowning in bills when really it was just one annoying car I was already dealing with. I stopped buying things just to avoid the comments. I'd eat cereal for dinner instead of ordering food. I'd wear old clothes even when they were falling apart. I started hiding purchases, stuffing bags in the trunk of my car until he wasn't around. Once, I drove 20 minutes to another town just to pick up some skincare stuff because I knew if he saw the bag, it'd be a whole lecture. That's how bad it got. I was budgeting my dignity. And here's the thing, he wanted me to feel guilty. That was the whole point. It wasn't about the money. It was about having something over me. Something he could keep bringing up to remind me I owed him. That I should be grateful. That I wasn't allowed to complain because he helped me. He used it as a leash. Every time I tried to pull away emotionally, he'd tug on it. Say stuff like, "After everything I've done for you," and act like buying me $600 of breathing room made him a saint. The messed up part is I started to believe him. I catch myself saying things like, "He's just trying to help me grow," or "Maybe I do need to be more responsible." I was so deep in it I couldn't see that what he was really doing was creating a fake version of me. One where I was some reckless, flighty girl who needed him to stay on track. It ended after this one weekend trip with my friends. I paid for it with my own saved money, didn't go over budget, didn't use his car or anything. Still, when I came back, he was waiting. Not yelling, just quiet. The kind of quiet that makes your stomach hurt. He said, "Must be nice to just run off on vacations while I'm here holding you down." I looked at him and realized I didn't feel love anymore, just guilt. Constant, never-ending guilt, and that's not love. I paid him back, every cent. Took 2 months, but I did. Once the final payment was made, I packed up my things and left. No drama. No big goodbye speech. I just texted him a photo of the transfer receipt and said, "We're good now." He offered to help with my debt, then used it to chip away at me one receipt at a time until I barely recognized myself, and then had the nerve to call it support. I used to work at this little family-run cafe in a strip mall between a dry cleaner and a vape shop, the kind of place that always smelled like syrup and overworked espresso machines. It wasn't fancy or anything, but it was warm and steady and kind of the only thing keeping me grounded during that time. My shifts were long but predictable, and for once, my life felt like it had a rhythm. And then came Alex. At first, it was kind of cute. He came in on my third day, just popped in during my lunch break with a small iced coffee and a wrapped croissant from another place. The Good Bakery, he called it. I laughed, told him he didn't need to bring anything, and he just grinned like that was part of the whole charm. That was the thing about Alex. He was all smiles and timing. He always seemed to know exactly when to show up. Or maybe I just hadn't figured out that he was learning my schedule down to the minute. The next week, he came twice. Then 4 times. Then almost every day. Sometimes with a muffin, sometimes with flowers, sometimes just to stand in the corner of the shop and watch me work. He'd wave at me while I rang people up, and if I was too busy to talk, he'd hang around until I got a break. The other baristas started calling him my loyal customer. Our manager thought it was adorable. One girl said, "You're so lucky. I wish someone would just show up for me like that." But I wasn't lucky. I was cornered. See, when he started showing up unannounced, it didn't matter if I was tired or pissed or on my period or not in the mood to smile. He was there, always smiling, always holding something. One time I was behind on orders, had a line stretching to the door, and he walked in with a damn gift bag and tried to hand it to me over the counter like it was my birthday. I whispered, "Not now," and he just stood there, blocking the pastry display waiting. People were watching. Customers, coworkers, everyone looking at me like I was rude for brushing him off, like I was a bad guy for not accepting the attention the right way. They didn't hear him at night when he'd call and say, "You seemed cold today," or "You smiled more for other people than you did for me." Like my mood was a service you paid for, like the gifts gave him a right to monitor me. I tried to set a boundary, told him I loved seeing him but needed space during work. He took it as a challenge. Said he'd stay out of the way and just drop things off. Like I had a personal delivery man now. One time, he left a wrapped box with another barista for me, and when I didn't open it right away, he texted. Kinda rude to leave it sitting there. I was elbow deep in dishes when he sent that. Then he started tracking my breaks. He'd text if I didn't clock out at the usual time. Ask who I was with if I mentioned grabbing food after. If I posted a story even remotely near the shop, he'd pop in 10 minutes later like it was coincidence. It wasn't. One time I turned off my location on Snap for a day and he freaked out. Said it made him nervous. Said if I didn't want him showing up, maybe I should tell him who I was seeing instead. I wasn't seeing anyone. I was literally just tired. And still, every time he showed up with something, people thought it was romantic. The chocolate-covered strawberries. The Starbucks orders with my name spelled right. The dumb little cards that said, "Missed you already," even though he'd seen me that morning. They'd nudge me and say, "Girl, don't mess that up." Like I owed him my gratitude because he brought me snacks and an inconvenience. One night, he waited in the parking lot for my whole shift. Didn't even come inside, just sat in his car until I walked out the back door. Said he wanted to drive me home because it was late. I hadn't asked. I didn't even want him there. But my rideshare wasn't coming fast enough, and it was dark out and I didn't want to cause a scene. So I got in, and he acted like we just had a date. I don't know how to explain what it felt like. That mix of being seen and invisible at the same time. Everyone could see him showing up. But no one saw what it was doing to me. I didn't want his gifts. I didn't want to be watched like that. I didn't want to feel like I was under someone's microscope while I was just trying to pay rent and make decent cappuccinos. Eventually, I asked for fewer shifts. Said it was for school. It wasn't. I just couldn't take him walking through that door one more time. Couldn't take the way everyone smiled when they saw him coming in like he was doing something sweet. Couldn't take the tension that built up behind my teeth every time I heard the door chime. He stopped showing up after that. For a while. Then he left a card in my mailbox. Just said, "Miss seeing you smile. Hope you're okay." I never replied. I just sat there with the card in my hand, wondering how something so small could make me feel so watched. So, anyway. Darnell wasn't one of those obvious red flags, you know. He didn't show up with drama or say wild stuff right away. He was just low-key weird. Not in a quirky way either. More like nothing ever fully added up. He was always kind of floating in this gray area between chill and paranoid, and I didn't catch it at first. Probably because I was too busy trying to make things work. When we started dating, I did the usual cute stuff. Posted that blurry picture of our coffees with his hand kind of in frame, wrote Sundays with a heart. Light stuff. Soft launch territory. I figured once things got a little more serious, I'd do the whole couple pic thing. Nothing crazy. I'm not that girl who posts every meal and minute, but still, if you're in my life like that, it's gonna show eventually. But nope. The first time I hinted at posting a pic of us, he shut it down fast. Said he didn't like being out there, said social media made him anxious. Told me he'd been burned before by people sharing too much. I figured it was personal. I respected it. Told him I'd wait until he was cool with it. Months went by, and every time I brought it up again, like just a picture from a trip or a birthday post, it was always some excuse. Now's not a good time. My family doesn't even know I'm seeing someone seriously. You never know who's watching. After a while, I stopped asking. I didn't want to feel like I was begging for basic acknowledgement. But here's where it got messy. He didn't want to be seen online. He was always deep in my comments. Not under his name, though. That's the thing. He had fake accounts. I didn't know at first, but I started noticing these random profiles liking everything I posted. Selfies, memes, stories of me just chilling. No profile picture, weird usernames like just scrolling 343 or music fan 223. Always the same exact likes, same timing. Then there were the questions. If I posted a picture with a guy in the background, he'd text me, "Who's that next to you?" Or if someone commented something innocent like looking good, he'd say, "You gonna reply to that?" At first, I thought he was just paying attention. Then I started catching details he shouldn't have known unless he was really looking. Like one day I posted a video at a party and he said, "That guy who kept fixing his hair, he looked into the camera 5 times." I hadn't even noticed that, and it was a 12-second clip. That's when I realized he was watching everything like it was surveillance footage. I confronted him once about it real chill. Just asked if he had burner accounts. He laughed and said, "Why would I do that?" But his laugh sounded off, like he wasn't even trying to lie well. The next day, I blocked one of the weird accounts that kept lurking, and guess who got salty out of nowhere? Him. Said I was being secretive and pushing him away. I was like, "Bro, I blocked a spam account. Why do you care?" And then it just kept escalating. If I didn't tag my location, he'd ask where I was. If I didn't respond to DMs quickly, he'd say, "You had time to post a story though." Every single post turned into a tiny investigation. One night, he told me I should just keep my page private since so many dudes were thirsty. But when I said he could post me then, he clammed up. Said, I don't need to prove anything to the internet, which is hilarious because that's exactly what I was being made to do, prove myself. The real turning point was when he went through my followers list. I didn't ask him to. I didn't even know he had. But out of nowhere, he sends me a screenshot of this guy who had liked 3 of my pics in a row and goes, "You used to mess with him, right?" I was like, "That's a friend from college, chill." But he didn't chill. Instead, he started liking random pictures of girls I didn't know, tagging me in dumb memes with other women, like he wanted to start something. And he still refused to be in a single picture on my page. I started posting less just to avoid the drama. Deleted comments before he could see them. Wouldn't even show my face in some stories, like I was hiding from someone, not followers, but him. He was the one watching me hardest. I even caught him screen recording my posts once. I asked why and he said, "I like keeping memories. I wanted to throw my phone." What killed it completely was when I found out he had a whole alt account where he followed my friends. My real friends. Girls I went to brunch with, people he'd never even met. He said it was just to make sure nobody was trying anything. Like I needed security. Like he was my personal bodyguard for a threat that didn't exist. I realized then he didn't actually hate social media. He hated the idea of me having a presence that he couldn't control. He didn't want privacy. He wanted invisibility. He wanted to be unseen while seeing everything. And that just didn't sit right. So I stopped asking for photos. I stopped deleting comments. I posted what I wanted. He called me disrespectful. I called it exhausting. And I ended it. No dramatic post. No goodbye story. Just a quiet block and delete. Jake had this way of leaning in when you talked, like you were saying the most important thing in the world. Like he was listening with his whole soul. It was one of the first things I liked about him. That stillness, that intensity. I'd never had anyone just sit and really listen to me before. Not zone out, not talk over me, not hit me with half-assed advice. Just quiet, full attention. So when I started opening up to him, it felt safe. Real. Like I could finally just say stuff out loud without having to worry how it sounded. I told him everything. Not all at once. It trickled out slowly. A story about my dad missing birthdays. A time in high school when I started skipping meals and couldn't explain why. The stuff with my older sister. How we were close but weirdly competitive in a way that still made me uncomfortable. Even the tiny things, like how I hated being interrupted mid-sentence or how I cried at dumb commercials. I told him all of it like it was sacred, and he took it all in like it was. Or so I thought. The fights didn't start big. At first it was over dumb stuff. The tone I used, something I forgot to do, a joke he didn't like. But even then, he always came loaded with receipts. Not real ones, but emotional ammo. And every fight was about being right. He didn't want to talk through anything. He wanted to win, and to win, he'd go low. It started small. I remember the first time he said, "You always do this. Shut down like you did with your dad." I froze. It wasn't even the insult. It was how calm he said it, like he was diagnosing me. Like all the vulnerable things I told him were just puzzle pieces he could rearrange to prove his point. I brushed it off. Told myself it was a slip, but he kept doing it. Every argument, he'd pull out one of those private moments I'd shared, like weapons he'd tucked away just in case. One time I got upset because he bailed on dinner with my friends, and he said, "You overreact when you feel abandoned. Just like you said about your sister leaving you out growing up." Like my feelings weren't even mine anymore. Just case studies he could twist. After that, I stopped wanting to talk about real things. He'd ask how my day was, and I'd say, fine, even if I cried in the bathroom at work. If I was anxious, I'd say I was just tired. Every time I even thought about opening up, I hear his voice in the back of my head, filing it away for later. Saving it. Not because he cared, but because it might help him win the next fight. And the more I shut down, the more he acted like that was the issue. Said I was distant. Said I wasn't being real with him anymore. Meanwhile, he kept taking everything I had shared and spinning it. If I snapped during a fight, he'd say, "There's the unhealed part of you again." Like he was my therapist. Only worse, because he used it against me. One night we were fighting about something stupid. I think it was about a message I forgot to respond to. And I said I felt like he was never really present with me anymore. That I felt lonely even when we were in the same room. And he just goes, "Maybe that's something you need to work on in therapy because you've always felt alone, even before me." I remember just sitting there completely still. Like my body wanted to move, but my brain hadn't caught up yet. Because I had said that once. In a conversation weeks ago, lying on the couch after too much wine, head on his chest, voice barely above a whisper. I've always felt alone. I said it once, and now it was a bullet point in his argument. He didn't even look sorry. He looked proud, like he'd landed a smart punch, like he won. I didn't cry, not then. I didn't give him that. After that, I tried to test him. Said little fake things here and there, made up facts about myself just to see if he'd ever throw those at me too. But he never used those. He only used the real ones. He knew which things would sting. And I think what really broke me wasn't even the stuff he said. It was knowing he waited. He let me trust him. He waited until I was open, until I was soft. And then he took it all and held it in his back pocket like insurance. In case he needed it. in case I ever tried to stand up for myself too much. I stopped talking during fights, stopped defending myself. What was the point? He always had a quote from me in memory, a wound I shared in a completely different context that he'd repackage into proof that I was an unstable one, the dramatic one, the one who couldn't just let things go. People say relationships should feel safe, that your person should be your place to land. Jake made me feel like I was constantly standing in a courtroom with no lawyer. Just him holding every secret I ever gave him and using it as exhibit A, B, and C. But there wasn't some big final explosion. No moment where I screamed and stormed out. I just started talking less. I stopped telling him about my day. I stopped sharing my dreams, my thoughts, my old stories. I went quiet. And when you take away the things someone can use against you, it gets really silent, almost peaceful. Eventually, he told me I wasn't being myself anymore, that I was emotionally closed off. I didn't argue. I just nodded. Let him be right. He couldn't throw anything at me if I stopped handing him the weapons. So, that happened. Logan had an ex. Big shocker, right? Who doesn't? He brought her up maybe once or twice when we first started dating. Very chill, very no hard feelings, very whatever. Said they broke up a while ago. Things fizzled out, mutual decision. I didn't really care. We all come with pasts, and as long as you're not still in love or actively texting them while we're at dinner, I'm good. What I didn't expect was how present she would stay in the background of our relationship. Like, not physically. She wasn't showing up at his place or anything dramatic, but she lived rent-free in his mind, and somehow he decided that meant she needed to live in my phone too. It started small. One night we were sitting around watching TV and he casually asked, "Hey, do you follow my ex on Instagram?" I was like, "No, why would I?" He just shrugged and said, "Just wondering." I didn't think anything of it. It was random, but whatever. Then a few days later, he sent me her profile. Actually sent me the handle in my DMs. No context, just a message that said, "Can you check if she's still with that guy she used to hang out with?" I thought it was a joke. I literally typed lol back, thinking we were being sarcastic. But then he texted again. "No, seriously, just check. Her account's public, right?" And that was it. That was the beginning of what became, I'm not exaggerating, a daily ritual. Every day, sometimes multiple times a day, Logan wanted a status update on this girl he wasn't with anymore. Sometimes it was simple. Anything new. Sometimes it was specific. Did she delete that post with the guy at the beach? He'd send me screenshots, ask what I thought about her captions, zoom in on the background of photos looking for clues like he was solving a crime. I kept thinking he'd get bored of it, that it was just a temporary thing. Closure or curiosity or whatever. But no, it became part of the relationship. Like, you know how some couples cook together or go on little weekend trips. We analyzed his ex-girlfriend's Instagram like it was a group project. At first, I humored him. Opened the profile, scrolled a bit, said stuff like, "Nope, nothing new," or "Still just her dog and smoothies." I thought maybe if I played along for a bit, he'd move on. That did not happen. Instead, he started asking me to dig deeper, check who she was following, who was commenting. If she posted a quote, he wanted to know if I thought it was about him. I wanted to say, "Dude, if she's still posting about you a year later, that's her problem, not yours." But I didn't. I kept it polite, kept it surface level. Then it started to get annoying. Like, he'd text me in the middle of my workday with, "Hey, can you see what she posted today?" Like I was on a deadline or something. He once called me during my lunch break and said, "I think she might be soft launching a new guy." I said, "What does that mean?" And he said, like posting a dude's shoulder or hand without tagging you. I didn't know, but apparently Logan did. If I didn't respond fast enough, he'd send a follow-up like, "You didn't check yet," or "Kind of weird that you don't care about this." And that's when I realized he wasn't asking anymore. He was expecting. Like, this was something I owed him because I was a new girlfriend and she was the old one and he needed to stay informed. That's the word he used once. Informed. Like he was subscribed to her newsletter and I was a delivery person. I told him I didn't want to keep checking, that it felt weird and kind of obsessive and maybe a little creepy. He told me I was being dramatic and said, "If you cared about me, you'd understand how much this messed me up. That was the first time he made it sound like I was a bad guy for not stalking someone. That's not a sentence I thought I'd ever say, but here we are. I didn't stop completely, but I started lying. I'd just say, nope, nothing new. Even when she posted, he never double-checked. He couldn't, she added, and blocked. Which, by the way, should have been a huge red flag. Like, your ex blocks you on everything. Maybe take that as a sign to stop watching her life through binoculars made of other people. At some point, I realized I hadn't had a conversation with Logan in weeks that didn't involve her. Even when we went out, it would come up. She hated sushi, by the way. He'd say while we were literally eating sushi. Or, this song used to make her cry when a random indie track came on. I just nodded and let it pass, but it got old. It's hard to feel like someone's really with you when they're clearly still mentally camped out in someone else's comment section. The last time I checked her profile was on a Tuesday. I remember because I had the day off, and I was sitting in bed with a snack and feeling weirdly gross about the whole thing. I looked at her latest post, just her on a hike, and instead of zooming in to see if some dude's water bottle was in the corner of the frame, I just put my phone down. I didn't care anymore. About her, about what she was doing, or about Logan's obsession with pretending it meant something. He texted me later that day, asked if I saw her story. I didn't reply. The next day, he sent another message. It's cool if you're over it. Just don't act like it didn't matter. I left it on read. Because I wasn't over it. I just never signed up to be part of it in the first place. With Ryan, everything felt possible at first, like the kind of person you meet and start planning the next 5 years with by accident. You know how it is when you're just vibing, talking late into the night about where you'd live if money didn't matter or what kind of house you'd build if you didn't have to compromise with anyone. We had those conversations and I loved them. I loved how easy it was to dream around him. Or, I thought it was easy. I just hadn't noticed yet that all those dreams had to be his. The first time I mentioned wanting to apply for a grad program out of state, he just smiled and said, "But you'd never really leave here, right?" I laughed and said something like, "Well, I might." He went quiet for a second and then said, "You hate being far from your family. And what would I do without you?" It wasn't mean. It wasn't controlling. It sounded sweet. That's what made it easy to ignore. But that was how it always started. Subtle, harmless seeming. Like when I told him I'd been thinking about starting my own thing. Just a small freelance side hustle, nothing serious at first. And he said, "You're such a good employee, though. You miss having structure." Again, sounded like he was looking out for me. Like he knew me better than I knew myself. But what he was really doing was closing doors one by one and making it sound like he was helping me avoid disappointment. I remember the moment it shifted from annoying to suffocating. I brought up possibly moving to the city for a job opportunity. Just floated the idea. And he looked at me, deadpan, and said, "I don't want to raise kids in the city." I blinked. I hadn't even mentioned kids. I was talking about a job. A few years max. He said, "Well, I just think long term. I don't want to get settled somewhere I'll hate." He said but the only vision in that conversation was his. He had this dream of owning land. Not even a farm, just land. A few acres and no neighbors, he used to say. And I'd smile and nod, but inside I knew that wasn't me. I wanted coffee shops and people walking by and places to go at 9 p.m. without needing to drive 45 minutes. But he said that was noise. Said one day I'd see how peaceful it was to just have quiet. When I tried to say I wasn't sure if I wanted kids, not for sure no, just that I hadn't made up my mind. He got quiet in that way he did when he was disappointed but didn't want to say it. He never argued. Just gave me that sad look, like I was a letdown. Like I was making the wrong call and he was too patient and kind to correct me. That look did more damage than yelling ever could. It made me feel that I had to fix it. Like I was a problem. So I started shifting my language. I stopped saying, "if I move," and started saying, "if we ever moved." I started tacking maybe in the future onto things I actually wanted now. He didn't ask me to do that. He didn't need to. I just slowly adjusted the parts of myself that didn't fit into his plan. And I hated it. I started catching myself looking up apartments I'd never live in. Jobs I wouldn't take. I'd read about workshops or conferences or cities that sparked something in me. And then I'd close the tab like I was caught doing something wrong. I started dreaming in silence. We were out at dinner once with some of his friends, and someone asked where I saw myself in 5 years. It wasn't even a deep question, just small talk. I started to answer and said something like, I'd love to eventually live in. And before I could finish, Ryan cut in. She's definitely staying close to home, he said, laughing. She miss her people too much. I laughed too, because that's what you do when someone answers for you in public. You laugh and take it. And then you sit with it later and feel like you've just vanished a little. There were good parts. That's what made it hard. He was funny. He cooked. He sent good luck texts when I had interviews. He asked about my parents. He didn't throw anything or cheat. But every time I tried to shape a future that wasn't his, he got smaller, colder. He made me feel like I was pushing us apart just by dreaming out loud. The last time we talked about goals, I mentioned wanting to take a year and travel, like actually do it, not just dream about it. He looked annoyed. Said, "You still thinking about that?" Like it was a phase. Like wanting something different was a glitch in my system that he was waiting for me to grow out of. I asked what would happen if I did it anyway. He shrugged and said, "Then I guess we're on different paths." He didn't say it to start a fight. He said it like he already knew the outcome. I don't remember the exact moment I decided I was done. It wasn't some dramatic realization. It just happened in layers. One small silence after another. One never mind after another. One day I woke up and realized I hadn't brought up anything I actually wanted in weeks. I was tired of pretending my dreams were flexible when really they were just getting smaller. And no, we didn't have a big breakup talk. I just stopped folding my plans to fit his. And once I stopped doing that, there was nothing left between us to hold. So that was Ryan. The guy who said he loved hearing about my goals until I actually had some. Adam didn't insult me directly. Not at first. He just told jokes, like a lot of jokes. Everything was a bit to him. Sarcastic, offhand, low-effort punchlines that always ended with him looking around like he expected applause. I used to laugh too, because you kind of have to, right? When someone says something as a joke and they're smiling and other people are around, you just go with it. Even if it stings, especially when it stings. The first time I noticed the sting, we were hanging out with his friends and someone brought up breakups. Just dumb talk. Who do you think would bounce back faster? Kind of thing. And without missing a beat, Adam goes, "She be screwed, she peaked with me." And then he did this little laugh, like he was just being playful. I laughed too, because everyone else did, and what was I gonna do? Start crying in the middle of someone's living room. But I remembered it, and once I noticed it, I started hearing it everywhere. Like the time I tried on this outfit I really liked, and he looked me up and down and said, "You better keep me, because no one else is gonna hype up those pants." Laugh. Grin. A pat on the back like it was cute, or when I showed him something I was working on, a project I was actually excited about. And he said, "Don't quit your day job." Or do, I guess. Your fallback plan is me. That one stayed with me longer than I like to admit. It became part of our dynamic. I'd do something, he'd make fun of it lovingly, and I'd laugh like it didn't get under my skin. If I ever paused or looked annoyed, he'd say, "Relax. You know I'm just messing with you." And the worst part is I started saying that too. When people asked if he was always like that, I'd shrug and say, "He's just messing around," like it was normal. But the jokes started shifting. They got more personal, more specific, like he wasn't even trying to hide what he was really saying anymore. One night I mentioned something about how I used to be insecure in high school, and he said, "Used to be," with a laugh and a kiss on the forehead. Another time I talked about this trip I'd love to take alone, and he said, "Solo travel, not with that face. You get robbed in 5 minutes." That one really got to me. I didn't say anything, but I remember going home and looking at myself in the mirror, wondering if I really looked that out of place in the world. I wish I was making that up. Eventually, I stopped sharing things with him. Not because he told me not to, but because I knew what would come next. I'd say something vulnerable, and he'd twist it into a punchline. I once told him I was afraid I wasn't doing enough with my life, and he said, "Well, you got me. That's more than most people get." I laughed so I wouldn't cry. That became a thing too, hiding tears behind fake laughter. Like if I could just trick myself into being amused, it wouldn't hurt so much. The thing that finally pushed me over wasn't even one of the worst ones. It was something stupid. I was talking about wanting to maybe go back to school one day or take a course in something I actually cared about. He was sitting across from me, scrolling through his phone, and said, without looking up, You should probably focus on keeping me instead of trying to chase something that's not gonna happen." I didn't even respond, just stared at him. Not because I was shocked, but because I realized in that moment I wasn't shocked anymore. That was just what he did. That was how he loved me. I got up, went to the bathroom, closed the door, and I cried, not loud, not dramatic, just quiet tears I wiped away before he could see. When I came back, he looked at me and grinned. "You crying? From that?" He laughed again. "Wow, I was just kidding. You're so sensitive." That laugh hit different. That laugh didn't feel like love. It felt like someone kicking you just to see if you'd flinch, like he was testing the limits of how far he could go and still have me stay. And honestly, I think that's exactly what he was doing. Seeing what he could get away with, how small he could make me feel while still playing the nice guy in public. He never apologized, not once, because in his mind there was nothing to apologize for. He never raised his voice, never called me names, never said, "You're worthless." He just joked. He just messed around, and I was the one who couldn't take it. So I left. No big scene, no confrontation. Just one day I stopped answering. Stopped laughing. Stopped playing the game. I think about that sometimes, how easy it is to stay when someone makes their insults sound like affection. How long I let someone chip away at my confidence because it came wrapped in a smirk and a wink. Anyway, that was this guy Adam. The guy who turned me into the punchline and laughed when it started to hurt. Terrible person, would not recommend. Josh was one of those guys who thought he was amazing at gift giving. Like, full on believed it was his love language. He'd brag about it, not just to me, but to literally anyone within earshot. I'm a thoughtful gift guy. He'd say like it was part of his identity, like it belonged on a business card or tattooed across his knuckles. And at first, it sounded kind of sweet. I mean, who doesn't like getting something from someone who supposedly knows you well? But it didn't take long to realize that Josh didn't actually give thoughtful gifts. He gave statement gifts. Big, flashy, unnecessary stuff that looked impressive on the outside, but had nothing to do with me. I remember the first gift he ever gave me. We'd only been seeing each other for a few weeks, and he showed up to my apartment with a huge designer purse. I'm not even talking about a mid-range bag. I mean the kind of purse you see locked behind glass at the mall. I looked at it and froze. Like, what? I wore a canvas tote every day. I'd literally never once mentioned wanting anything designer. I didn't even like carrying purses like that. But he stood there, grinning, waiting for my reaction. So I gave him one. I smiled, said, "Wow, this is really nice." I was trying to be polite. I thanked him. I hugged him. I put the purse on the table and said I'd save it for special occasions. That apparently wasn't enough. He didn't say anything that night, but a couple days later, when I didn't bring the bag with me on a casual Target run, he said, "Guess you didn't like it that much." Just like that. Out of nowhere. I told him it wasn't that. I just didn't want to mess it up or look weird walking around with a $1,000 purse at 11 p.m. while buying deodorant. He said, "Whatever. I'll keep the receipt next time." I laughed it off. Thought maybe he was just sensitive about it, but it kept happening. Next came a necklace. Again, expensive. Again, not my style at all. I'm super minimal. Plain hoops, maybe a simple chain. This one looked like something someone's aunt would wear to a charity event. I wore it once to dinner with him, just to be nice, and when I didn't wear it again, he brought it up with this fake casual tone. I guess the necklace was a swing and miss huh. I told him it was lovely, I just didn't dress up that often. He said, "I put a lot of time into picking that out, but okay." He once bought me this complicated espresso machine. Thing looked like it belonged in a science lab. Problem was, I don't drink coffee, never have. I've been a tea person since forever. He knew this. Still gave it to me and said, "You can learn. You're missing out." I just stared at it sitting on my kitchen counter like it was mocking me. I didn't even unwrap all the parts. It wasn't about the gifts. That's the thing. It was never about what he gave me. It was about how I reacted. Or didn't, I guess. Because every time, without fail, he wanted this giant, emotional, dramatic moment. He wanted gasps and squeals and tears. He wanted me to lose my mind over how incredible and perfect he was. And when I didn't, he'd get cold. He'd pull back, sulk, make little comments like, "You don't really know how to show appreciation, did you?" Or, "You're the first person I've dated who doesn't know how to say thank you." I did say thank you. Every time. I was polite. I wrote notes. I offered to cook him dinner. But apparently, none of that counted unless I acted like you reinvented gift giving. And the irony. He never once asked me what I actually liked. Not once. Never said, "Hey, is there anything you've been wanting?" Never asked my favorite stores, colors, styles. He just assumed. He gave what he liked. What he thought would make him look good. And if I didn't perform the way he pictured it in his head, it was my fault. One time I tried to tell him, super gently, that I appreciated the thought, but the gifts weren't really my thing. That I preferred smaller stuff. Thoughtful, everyday stuff. Like when someone remembers you said your hand lotion ran out and they bring you a new one. Or when someone gets you snacks for your period week without being asked. That kind of thing. He said, "So you're telling me I should just got you a bag of chips like it was a joke? Like I was beneath the kind of luxury he wanted to be known for providing." After that conversation, he got me tickets to a concert for an artist I'd literally never listened to. Like full on front row, VIP, wristbands, everything. He handed them to me with this smug little smirk like he was daring me to be underwhelmed again. I Googled the artist right in front of him and said, "They're not even on my playlists." He said, "Well, you should expand your taste." So I did, just not in music. I started paying attention to the way I felt when I got texts from him, how I used to get excited, and then it slowly turned into dread. I started noticing how small I felt after every gift, how I started thinking maybe I was ungrateful, that maybe I didn't know how to receive love right, that maybe he was doing everything right and I was the one who couldn't keep up. But nah. Love isn't a performance, and gratitude shouldn't be scored like a game show. If your kindness comes with a scoreboard, it's not a gift, it's leverage. Anyway, he got mad when I didn't pretend they were everything I ever dreamed of. With Karnan, it was always about how things looked. That was his whole thing. The outfits, the playlists, the jokes he repeated just loud enough for other people to hear. He dressed like he was going to be photographed at all times, even if we were just grabbing groceries, and he treated every room like it was his personal audience. People liked him instantly, or they were just too polite to say otherwise. But either way, he always had this ability to take over the space. It was part of why I was drawn to him, at first. I didn't catch on to the flirting thing right away. That's what messes with me, because I'm not clueless. I know what flirting looks like, but with him, it was all just under the line. Like if I said something, I'd sound jealous or controlling. He wasn't saying anything technically inappropriate, just constantly complimenting my friends in ways that didn't sit right. Stuff like, "Wow, you've got great style. That color's insane on you." Or, "You have such good energy." That's rare. Always with this big smile like he was just being nice. The first time I noticed it, it was with my friend Shay. We were hanging out at my place, just the three of us. Shay was talking about a date she went on, and Karnan said, "Honestly, I don't even know why you're single. That guy probably just got intimidated." She laughed, I laughed, but it hit weird. Not because of Shay, she's great, but because it didn't feel like a compliment from a random guy. It felt personal. Too much. I didn't say anything that time, or the next few times. Like when he told my friend Talia she had dangerous eyes, or when he messaged one of my guy friend's girlfriends to say she looked incredible in those boots after he saw her tagged in a post. Not kidding. I asked him why he did that, and he said, "I like making people feel good about themselves." I told him it made me uncomfortable, and he immediately hit me with, "Wow, you're really this insecure." That was his move. Every time I brought something up, he flipped it. He didn't argue. He didn't scream. He just smirked like I was making a fool of myself. He made me feel small without ever raising his voice. Made it seem like the issue wasn't what he was doing, but that I couldn't handle it. And the thing is, he wasn't flirting with strangers. It was always my friends. Girls I'd grown up with, girls I trusted, girls who were never the problem. And I want to be clear about that. They weren't encouraging him. If anything, they were clearly uncomfortable too. But no one said anything because he made everything sound like a joke. Like if you didn't laugh, you were the one being weird. He once told my friend Kendra she should model. Said her face looked like it was meant to be on camera. I remember just sitting there like, am I being punked? She looked at me mid-sentence like she didn't know how to react. I forced a smile. That's what I did a lot back then. Smiled through it. Smiled so I didn't start a fight in front of people. But it started eating at me. I stopped inviting people over. Started making excuses when he wanted to tag along to things. Told him I was tired or needed alone time. He'd always ask why I didn't want her around anymore, and I'd lie. Said I needed to focus on work. Said I was stressed. The truth was, I didn't want to watch him put on a show while I stood next to him playing the quiet girlfriend. Eventually, I told him straight up. Sat him down and said, "It bothers me when you compliment my friends like that. It crosses a line." He blinked at me and said, "They're not used to getting compliments or something." Like they were the ones who couldn't take a joke. Then added, "You know I only want you. You're being extra." I tried to explain that it wasn't about whether he wanted me. It was about respect. About boundaries. About not making the people I love feel like they were being scoped out by my boyfriend. But he didn't get it. Or maybe he just didn't care. He told me again I was being insecure. Said he'd dated girls before who were confident and wouldn't let a few harmless compliments ruin the vibe. I didn't respond. I just sat there and let him talk. Because at that point, I knew I wasn't getting anything different out of him. That was his version of an apology, turning it around so I felt like I had to apologize instead. I started writing things down after that. Not to be dramatic, I just needed to keep track. I jot down what he said, when he said it, how I felt afterward. Little notes on my phone that no one saw. It made me feel like I wasn't crazy. Like if I had a log, I could look back and remind myself, no, that was weird. That wasn't okay. That wasn't just a joke. And yeah, I stayed longer than I should have. Because it wasn't always bad. Because he was good at flipping switches. Some days he was sweet. Some days he remembered my favorite snacks and rubbed my shoulders and played me music he said reminded him of me. But the tension never went away. It sat under everything. This knowing that the next time we were around people I cared about, I'd be bracing myself. The day I left wasn't dramatic. No screaming, no cheating, no big blow-up. I just woke up and realized I couldn't keep babysitting his ego every time we were in a room with other people. I couldn't keep swallowing my reactions and playing cool while he made comments that would make anyone else uncomfortable. I wanted someone who knew where the line was and didn't need me to draw it for him every week. I packed a bag and went to stay with my cousin. Told him I needed space. He didn't ask why. Just said, "Let me know when you're done being dramatic." I didn't let him know. I just never went back. With Noah, it all felt low-key at first, like he wasn't loud or over the top. He didn't throw big tantrums or accuse me of cheating out of nowhere. That's probably why it took me a minute to realize how weird things were getting. He was one of those chill until he's not people. Calm voice, serious face, always phrased things like he was just concerned, never controlling. But it added up. The location tracking thing didn't start off wild. One night I was going out with my cousin. I was taking forever to get ready, and I said something dumb like, "If I disappear, I'm wearing the brown boots." He laughed and said I should get your location just in case something actually happens. And I said, "Sure, yeah, safety or whatever," like a joke. And that's how it started, me laughing, and playing it off like a responsible move. At first, I didn't even remember we shared it. We weren't super glued to our phones, and I didn't feel like I had anything to hide. He'd text me here and there like, "Just saw you made it home," or "Looks like your Uber's stuck again." But it felt casual, helpful even. Then I started getting these weird, low-key texts. "Did you end up going to that other place too? You were at the park for a while. Everything good? You said you were going to lunch at noon, but you didn't leave till after 1. Stuff like that. Stuff that wasn't framed like accusations, just little check-ins. But it started to happen a lot. Like, anytime I was even slightly off my normal pattern, he'd pop in with a question. I'd run an errand after work and boom, he'd message me asking what store I ended up at. And if I didn't reply fast, he'd double text like, "Not trying to be annoying, just making sure you're good." The way he said, "not trying to be," should have been a red flag, because that's exactly what he was doing. It got to a point where I was texting him every time I left somewhere. Not because he asked me to, but because I wanted to avoid the follow-up. I'd say things like, "Just stopped at Target real quick," or "Back home now." He didn't even react most of the time. He just left it on read. It started to feel like I was clocking in and out of a shift, like I was on some silent schedule I didn't agree to. One night, I turned my location off, not even on purpose. I updated my phone, and some setting reset. I didn't even notice it was off until he called me. He goes, "Hey, everything okay?" I said, "Yeah, why?" He said, "I can't see your location." I said, "Oh, wiggered. Probably the update." And there was this pause. Then he says, "Okay, I just didn't know where you were. Usually check in." That phrase, "usually check in," made my stomach twist a little. Not because I was scared, but because I hadn't even noticed how normal that had become. Like, yeah, I did usually check in. Like I was a teenager sneaking out or something. Like I owed him a log of my every move. From then on, he brought it up more. If I was running late, he'd say, "Just wondering where you were." If I went somewhere with someone he didn't know well, he'd ask for their name. He once asked for the license plate of the friend's car I was getting into. Said it was just in case something happened. I remember standing in the parking lot holding my phone, thinking, do I actually have to do this right now? I told him it was making me uncomfortable, that it was starting to feel like surveillance, not protection. He gave me this whole speech about how bad things happen to good people, how he's seen stories, how he only asks because he cares. He said, "It's not about control. I just want to know you're okay." And maybe he believed that, but the effect was the same. I stopped taking spontaneous trips to the grocery store, started second-guessing coffee with friends unless I had time to let him know exactly where I'd be, started making up fake errands so I wouldn't have to explain that I just wanted to go for a walk without anyone knowing. It's a weird thing when someone's watching you, but they never admit they're watching. They just happen to always know what you did, where you were, what time you left and came home. You start feeling paranoid even if nothing technically bad is happening. It's not all they do. It's about how do you start changing yourself to avoid it. I brought it up again. Told him flat out, I'm not comfortable sharing my location anymore. He didn't yell. He didn't beg. He just went quiet and said, "I didn't realize you had something to hide." That's when I knew I was done. Because it wasn't about hiding. It was about privacy, boundaries, breathing room. But he twisted it in his head to mean betrayal. I turned it off that night. Didn't text to explain. Didn't answer when he followed up. I think he figured it out. He tried calling twice. Left a voicemail saying he hoped I was safe, that he was just trying to protect me, but I could hear it. That edge in his voice. That frustration. That feeling of being denied access to something he thought he owned. I didn't respond. I didn't unblock him either. Not because I hate him, but because I already spent too long letting him quietly follow me everywhere I went. The guy who said he loved me, but only when he could track me in real time. The first time Cameron pointed something out about me, it felt a one-off. We'd only been dating for maybe a month. I had this habit of saying sorry too much. I'd apologize for things that didn't need an apology. One day he said, "You say sorry like it's a reflex. You should work on that." It didn't feel rude at the time. I actually thought he was helping me notice something I didn't realize I was doing. So I nodded and said, "Yeah, you're right." But that wasn't the end of it. That was just the start. Because a few days later, we were watching a show and I was talking about one of the characters, and apparently I interrupted him without realizing. Afterward, he told me, "You should also work on not talking over people." I was like, "Oh, okay, fair." I figured he was just being honest. But then the next week, he brought up something else. He said, "You kind of fidget too much when you're nervous. It's distracting." That one stung a little, but I brushed it off. I started to realize that every week there was a new thing. A new flaw I was supposed to fix. Sometimes it was small, like you chew with your mouth slightly open, or you text with too many exclamation marks. Other times it felt personal, like you tell stories that go on too long, or you act kind of awkward around my friends. I didn't even notice when it stopped being occasional and turned into routine. He literally made a list. No joke. He opened his notes app once and showed it to me. Titled it, "Things to Work On, Relationship Edition." It had bullet points. It was organized. The way someone would track their gym goals or stuff to pack for a trip. I remember laughing awkwardly like, what even is this? And he was totally serious. He said, "I thought it'd be good for growth. It's not just about you. I can make one for myself too if you want." He never made one for himself. Not once. Every time we had a conversation about it, he framed it like he was doing me a favor. Like this was him being invested. He told me, if I didn't care, I wouldn't bother. Most guys would just let you keep doing the same stuff and not say anything. And that got in my head. I started thinking, maybe this is what a real relationship looks like. Maybe we're just being mature and working through stuff that everyone else avoids. So I took it seriously. I started checking myself. I'd hesitate before telling stories to make sure they weren't too long. I stopped saying sorry for little things. I changed the way I texted. I stood straighter, talked less, thought more before speaking. I didn't even realize how much I was altering myself until I heard my friend say, "You've been kind of quiet lately." I didn't feel like myself anymore. I felt like an employee on a performance improvement plan. One night, we were getting ready to go to dinner with his coworkers, and I wore this dress I really liked. Not super fancy, but cute, simple. I walked out, and he looked at me and said, "Maybe something more mature. This one's a little young looking." I just nodded and went back in and changed. Didn't argue, didn't say a word. Just added outfits aren't mature enough to the imaginary list in my head. Another thing I needed to fix. Later that night, after dinner, I brought it up. I asked him if he ever thought maybe he was being too critical. That maybe all these improvements he wanted weren't really about helping me. Maybe they were about control. He looked surprised, genuinely surprised, like I just accused him of something completely out of character. He said, "You've changed a lot, for the better. Isn't that what you want? To grow?" And that's when it hit me. He didn't think he was being controlling. He thought he was making me better. He believed his list was a gift, a blueprint for how I could become a more acceptable, more polished, more manageable version of myself. After that conversation, I started to pull back, not all at once. I didn't have some huge epiphany and pack my bags. It was slow, quiet. I started wearing the clothes I wanted again. Started interrupting him when I had something to say. I didn't text back right away. Didn't apologize for laughing too loud or talking too fast. And every time I did something that would have been on the list, I watched him. He didn't like it. He didn't say much at first, just got colder, less affectionate, more distant. Then one day he brought the list up again and said, "I feel like you're slipping back into old habits." And I said, "Yeah, that's the point." He didn't get it. He thought I was self-sabotaging. He said, "Why undo all the progress we've made?" I laughed. Couldn't help it. I said, "We didn't make progress. I just stopped being myself." And that was the last real conversation we had. He didn't text the next day. I didn't either. I deleted the messages. I deleted his contact. I deleted the voice in my head that told me I had to change in small, constant ways just to be tolerated. I'm still fixing things, but they're mine now. I didn't figure it out all at once. It happened slowly, quietly, the kind of slow that makes you question your own memory. At first, I thought I just wasn't paying attention, like maybe I forgot to save someone's number after I got a new phone, or maybe they changed phones and never message again. That's how things go sometimes. People drift, or that's what I kept telling myself. But it wasn't that. Blake was behind it, and it took way too long for me to notice. When we started dating, he didn't seem like someone who wanted to control anything. He was actually chill about most stuff, or at least he acted like it. We had the same taste in music, went on a lot of long drives, and he liked being around me a little too much, but I thought that was normal in the beginning. I just figured he was into it. But the more time we spent together, the more little things he started pointing out about the people in my life. It would come up randomly, like after I get off a call or laugh at a text. He'd say, "Why are you still talking to that guy?" Or, "That girl always seems a little off to me." And he said it like he was just being honest, like he was looking out for me. At first, I defended people. Said things like, "They're just friends," or "We've known each other forever." And Blake would shrug like he wasn't starting something, but I could tell it stuck in his head. He didn't bring people up more than once unless he was serious. He'd say one small thing and let it simmer until eventually those people started fading out of my life. What I didn't realize was that it wasn't just me drifting from them. He was helping it happen. One day I went to text my old friend Lami. We had a dumb inside joke, and I saw something that reminded me of her, so I went to send a pic, but her name didn't show up. I scrolled through and it was like she never existed in my contacts. I figured maybe I'd accidentally deleted it or lost it when I changed phones a month before. I sent her a message on Instagram and she replied, but it felt distant, like it already disappeared from her orbit and she wasn't sure if I really meant to pop back in. That should have been my first red flag, but I ignored it. Then it happened again. This time it was a guy named Andrew, someone I've been cool with since high school. Never dated, never crossed any lines. But we kept in touch over the years and he even helped me move once. I remembered him texting me about a new job a few weeks earlier, and I wanted to follow up, but he was gone. Just like Lonnie, not blocked, not in deleted messages, just wiped. I started to feel uneasy. I looked through my contacts just scrolling without knowing exactly what I was looking for. It was like walking into a room you haven't been in for a while and realizing some stuff is missing, but you can't name what. The more I thought about it, the more I noticed a pattern. Everyone who was gone was someone Blake had commented on before. People he said were bad energy or distractions. Not outright enemies, just people he thought didn't belong in my life. I laughed it off when he said those things. I didn't think he was serious. Turns out he was. It hit me when I saw him pick up my phone while I was half asleep one night. He thought I was out cold. I had my arm over my face, lying on my side. He grabbed my phone from the nightstand and sat back against the headboard like he was checking something. I stayed quiet, eyes half shut, but I could hear the taps. He wasn't on Instagram or scrolling through TikTok. He was in my contacts. I waited. Didn't say anything until the next morning. I asked him casually, "Hey, did you see my phone last night?" He said, "Yeah, I was just checking the time." I nodded even though I'd seen him. I wasn't ready to start a fight. I was still trying to figure out if I was overthinking it. But I wasn't. That day I checked again. 2 more people were missing. People I hadn't talked to in a while, but had no reason to delete. I knew right then it wasn't a coincidence. He was going into my phone while I was sleeping and deleting people quietly, strategically. Not all at once, just enough that I wouldn't notice until I already felt alone. When I finally confronted him, he didn't even try to deny it. He said, "You don't need people who don't check in. You spend all your energy on people who wouldn't do the same for you." I said, "So you thought it was your place to decide who stays in my life?" He said, "Someone had to." It wasn't just about insecurity. It was about control, about isolation. He wanted to be the only person I went to for anything. Every time I lost touch with someone, it made me lean on him a little more. He created the silence, then positioned himself as the only voice in the room. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just told him I needed air and went for a walk. I didn't go back. It took weeks to undo what he did. I had to dig through old group chats, scroll through years of messages, re-add people with half-remembered usernames. Some of them answered. Some didn't. Some were polite but distant, like they weren't sure why I disappeared in the first place. I couldn't blame them. And Blake, he texted a few times, never once saying sorry. Just stuff like, "I hope you're surrounding yourself with better people now," like he still thought he was right. I didn't reply. That was Blake, the guy who thought deleting my contacts would bring us closer, and didn't even flinch when I caught him doing it. Nathan was the kind of guy who prided himself on being logical. Like if you brought up feelings or anything that didn't come with a spreadsheet, he'd act like you were speaking in riddles. He said emotions were fine, but only if they made sense. And if they didn't make sense to him, then they were a distraction. He made that real clear the first time I cried during a disagreement. It wasn't even a fight, just a weird vibe day. We were out with his friends, and I felt kind of ignored. He kept talking over me, making little jokes at my expense that were landing harder than usual. I wasn't trying to make a scene or anything. I waited until we got back to his place and then brought it up. I didn't yell or accuse. I just told him I felt a little off, like maybe he'd gone too far with the jokes. He didn't say much at first, just kind of nodded, then looked at me and said, "Are you gonna cry?" I hadn't even started yet. I was holding it together, but the way he said it made my chest tighten. That thing where your face goes hot before the tears even fall. I tried to hold it in, but a few slipped out. And that was it. He got quiet for a second and then said, "You can't do that when we argue. It's manipulative." I blinked. I was like, what? He said, you crying shuts down the conversation. I feel like I can't say what I need to say when you do that. It messed with my head. I actually apologized. I wiped my face and said, I'm not trying to manipulate you. And he just said, I'm not mad. I'm just telling you how it feels. That was the beginning of a pattern I didn't recognize until way later. From that point on, anytime I got even a little emotional, he'd shut down the conversation completely. He'd say stuff like, I'm not going to talk to you if you're just going to cry again, or I'll wait until you've calmed down. Even if I wasn't crying, even if I was just visibly not okay. He'd pull out that line, like being upset automatically made my side invalid. It made me second guess myself constantly. I started watching the way I talked during arguments like I was walking on glass. If I felt my voice start to shake or my throat get tight, I'd pause, breathe deep, try to keep it together. I didn't want to give him an excuse to stop listening, because that's what it turned into. If I cried or even looked like I might, he'd say, see, this is why we can't have a normal conversation. And then it was done. No resolution. No answers. Just me sitting there alone with the same feeling I started with, except now I felt embarrassed too. I started doing all my processing alone. I'd hold everything in during the moment and save the crying for when I got home, or in my car, or in the shower. I didn't talk to my friends about it because it didn't sound like something that bad. Like, what was I supposed to say? My boyfriend won't let me cry around him. It sounded dramatic when I said it out loud, but it was real. It reached a breaking point one weekend. We were supposed to visit my family for my cousin's birthday, but he bailed last minute. Said he didn't feel like making small talk with people he barely knew. I told him that was fine, but I was still going. He said okay, but I could tell he was annoyed. When I got back the next day, he was short with me, kept acting like I did something wrong. I asked if he was upset, and he said no. I asked again later, and he said, why does everything have to be so emotional with you? I didn't even cry that time. I just sat there and said, you always say that when I ask how do you feel. It's like you think feelings are a problem. He rolled his eyes and said, you're trying to start a fight. That was it. No explanation, no talking it through. I left early that night, and I didn't text him. He didn't text me either. A few days later, I got a voice note from him. He said, I just think we're not emotionally compatible. I don't know how to deal with someone who cries every time we have a tough conversation. That one hit hard. I replayed it 5 times. Not because I missed him, but because I kept trying to hear it differently. Like maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe I'd been doing too much. I sat with that feeling for a few hours. Then I started scrolling through old messages, thinking about how many times I'd backed down, how many times I'd stayed quiet just to avoid being told I was too much. And it clicked. He wasn't uncomfortable with crying. He just didn't like not being in control of the tone. If I got upset, it meant things weren't going his way. He didn't want to deal with vulnerability, not mine, and probably not his either. He didn't want a real relationship. He wanted something tidy, easy, someone who only reacted when it was convenient. So I deleted the message, deleted his number too. No long goodbye, no huge fight, no closure talk. Just done. Because the truth is, crying isn't manipulation, it's human. And if someone sees you're hurt and all they feel is inconvenience, then they don't care about you. They just care about staying comfortable.